Welcome to another episode of 30 Minutes with DailyStraits.com. Our guest today is Ben Gleisner, the founder and CEO of Kogo. Ben is an economist, environmentalist, and social entrepreneur who launched Kogo in 2018. He launched the business in London before moving back to his home country of New Zealand early last year. For those of you who are not in the know, Kogo is an app that helps consumers make informed decisions when it comes to reducing their carbon footprint. In other words, it empowers consumers with their data through an open banking technology, showing them their footprint, making easy recommendations on how they can lower it through various actions, such as having a plant-based diet, buying second-hand goods, or aligning their spending by showing them businesses that are taking action to reduce their impact on the environment. Kogo is currently trading in New Zealand and the UK but has plans to expand to new markets, with Australia being next on the list. So, today we're going to talk to Ben about how he got the idea to start his business and much more. Hi, Ben. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, June. Great to be here. Welcome to New Zealand.
Thank you. All right. So let's just dive to the question. So, after working for the New Zealand Treasury for 7 years, you made the decision to switch careers, and one that was to not an easy one to entrepreneurship. You dived in,
Yep.
So basically, tell us the story because it's so hard to get a job in the government,
Sure.
more so in the Treasury,
Why did I
and you
leave my cushy job? Yeah.
yeah. So what was the story and what was the behind
Sure.
that?
No problem. Yeah. So I'd done university environmental economics. So I had my master's, and I was like, where would I want to go to try and create change in the world, positive impact? And yeah, the Treasury was an opportunity that I got a job in, and I worked for many years on climate change policy, on social policies, like how do we get more people into jobs and things like this, and then also things around how do we measure progress in society. So how do we measure things that aren't just about financial growth, but also social, environmental stuff. So, but the reason that I was like, man, this is so slow and like things just take more time. And so I'd been doing all this work trying to create impact and change in the world, but it just wasn't moving. And I was looking at things like, technology companies and other things like, the Netflix and Ubers and Airbnbs of the world now that sort of, they were the ones that were changing the world, I guess. And I was like, look, if I'm going to change the world, I don't know if flying around, going to the United Nations and having meetings about climate change was actually causing more climate change than it was probably solving. So I was like, yeah, it wasn't creating enough change. So I decided to start working 4 days a week. And on the other day, I worked on an idea, called Conscious Consumers, which is the predecessor to Kogo. So it was really just, I wanted to change the world, and I wanted to basically think about the ways that we're going to make that happen. And it didn't feel like government was the place to do that. So yeah, that's why I left and set up the first business, which was Conscious Consumers.
Okay, so was that your first job?
My first job actually was out of university. The first time I did chemical engineering as a degree. And actually my first job was I bought a cafe. So I worked in the cafe. So my first entrepreneurial thing was actually owning a coffee shop. So that was
Oh.
in 1999. It's not on my LinkedIn or CV, but yeah, my first job was actually a coffee shop, and I bought that when I was 21 years old.
And you sold it to join the
We
government or?
sold it, exactly, sold it, then set up a music festival business that was promoting organic, sustainable development and zero waste. So that was 21 years ago. So sold the cafe, bought and set up a sort of music festival. It was, yeah. And then again, this was like trying to change the world and get people to think about these things. And it was like, again, not things weren't going as whatever. I couldn't see the impact we were creating from a festival. Do people who find out about recycling go home and recycle after the festival? I don't know. And so that was when I went back to do my master's and then end up in government. So yeah, I've had a few different, let's say, entrepreneurial things in my life, but government felt like a good place to be for those years. But in the end, it wasn't entrepreneurial enough. Probably it wasn't innovative enough. It wasn't changing things fast enough.
Awesome. Okay, so you went for 4 days and then you quit, right? And then went to
Yeah.
your business. So tell me about that transaction. So how long were you doing for part-time work for the government before you decided to,
Yeah,
hang
so
the
it
boots
was
and
hang the boots up. Yeah, I think it was, yeah, about, as I said, towards the last maybe 2 years of my time in government, I was doing 4 days a week. And then it was like, I think we got some funding from government, actually, not my, not my department, but another agency in government, and some local council funding. And I think we had our first child, and my wife was like, I'm going to work from home. And I was like, why don't I work from home, set up an office at home, and try to give this thing a go. So yeah, it was in 2012 that I quit the job, and by that stage we'd sort of proven that the idea was something that maybe could be something in terms of a business, but it was still a charity at that time. So Kogo, as you said, was born in 2018, but there was almost 7 years of sort of work that was done beforehand in the same space, but mostly through a charity that we set up to sort of run the business. Yeah.
all right. So you left your job and then did you have like a lot of savings or what was the initial investment for conscious
Yeah,
consumers?
it was a mixture of, yeah, a little bit of work for free for sure. So
Mhm.
managed to, yeah, save some money working in the government, and then, yeah, we got funded with grants. So local, because our platform was helping consumers think about their impact, as you said, but also we're supporting businesses to also respond, and particularly around things like reducing their waste that they were creating and things. So governments and stuff actually were giving money, and so philanthropic, so charities would actually give us money. So people would just donate money to us, and then the government would give us grants. So we had a little bit of money, enough. It wasn't the same pay I was on at Treasury,
Mm.
but it was enough to make sure we had enough money for our baby to have food and things like this. But yeah, it was fine. It was good. It was definitely worth it. Looking back on it, it was definitely the right move. Yeah.
So you started as a one-man show or did you have like
I
some
had
a
a
partner?
co-founder, yeah,
Yeah.
Melissa, a woman who I was at university with, actually, doing the Masters of Environmental Studies together. She was working actually at the Ministry for the Environment, and I was working at the Treasury. So we both sort of, in our spare time, set up Conscious Consumers, I guess. And yeah, so she actually ended up coming on and working in the business as well. But yeah, so there's two of us, really, two founders.
Awesome. Is she still in the business?
She's actually had her second kid and is now living out of Wellington. So she's involved with the charity. So the major owner, or the biggest owner of the company, is actually the charity now. So that when we incorporated and set up Kogo, the charity actually was the big shareholder in the company because they'd built it up to that point. So she actually represents the charity sort of on the company's board.
Awesome. Okay, so I'd like to ask this question. How did you tell your boss at the time when you were working that you wanted to go part-time and work on your dreams?
Yeah.
Was that a difficult conversation?
I think it was funny because Vicky Robertson was my boss at that time. She's now the chief executive of the Ministry for the Environment here in New Zealand. It's funny because at the time the government realized that a lot of people were working really long hours, and like work-life balance wasn't so good. So they were really trying to champion that the Treasury for the government could be a place where people could work part-time, flexibly and stuff. So in some ways, there was a big open door that when I said I want to do 4 days, they were like, great, because we want to support people to be able to do 4 days working week. So yeah, in short, they were supportive of it. And I don't know, I think in many ways they realized that 4 days, lots of evidence now that 4 day working week, you get a lot more value than 80% out of someone when they work 4 days. So there's also, from an economist point of view, you get better return on investment maybe. So who knows, it was fit that argument as well. But yeah, it was not a hard conversation. And yeah, they ended up losing me, I guess. So after a couple of years, I left. But yeah, the chief executive and even the government ministers who I worked with, they knew that I was leaving, and they all said, well, at least you're going to go and do some work that was going to create impact that we're also trying to achieve in the world. So in some ways, or in New Zealand. So it felt like almost I was actually going out to do some of the sort of things that government was trying to do anyway, like climate change or plastic waste or social inequality and these things. So it was almost an easier sell about why I was leaving. It wasn't like I've given up on government. I want to go and, I don't know, start doing some mining somewhere or whatever. Some stuff the government, would be a bit like, why are you doing that? So yeah.
No, but I just wanted to ask you because not all bosses are very keen on their employees working on other projects while working with them. But you're
Yes.
very lucky to get a very good boss.
New
Were you?
Zealand is,
Mm,
I think New Zealand government particularly, they're quite progressive. I mean, in some ways, think about me and my team here now. We really want to make sure that the people that work for this company feel like they're being supported. And if they want to work 3 days a week and have time with their family, or they want to work 4 days and do 1 day a week on something, it's like, as a good business, you should offer that, because you'll keep that person working for you. Mostly they'll definitely tell their friends about how cool it is to work here. And so you build, I guess, a culture where the people who work for you feel valued and understood. And yeah, so I think it's a no-brainer. Again, more and more now, it's moving in that direction.
awesome. So did you doubt yourself throughout the whole journey? Because a treasury job is a really good job and it's hard to get. And you
Yes,
meet all the cream de la cream, but you left it and you went
I
into
know.
your business.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
while you were working on it in the early days, did you ever think, oh my God, I should call my ex-boss and say, go back?
I want a
Did
job.
you?
Yeah, there was probably 2 or 3 times I can remember. Not so much like, yeah, I did actually probably think that if I did want another job, I would go back to Treasury because it was a good place to work. They were doing interesting things. I think the main challenge was just financial security, probably around, my wife had gone back to work maybe when we were about to have our second child. And it was like, it was just a little bit of too much uncertainty about the future. So I think that definitely was one of the reasons, probably the main reason where I've thought about it in the past would have been, man, I don't know if we're going to have any money in 6 months' time in this business, you
All
know.
right.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, there was definitely, and then we also moving to the UK as a family, as you said, that was actually really quite hard in the first maybe 6 months when we got there. Um, it's yeah, there's a lot of pressure and particularly financial pressure on a startup. When you start a business, what is it? 99% of them just never happen, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so I felt that at least 2 times, 3 times when it was like, and I guess they're the times when I was sort of like, oh, maybe it would have been better to stay. But now we're through it and it's going really well. And there's, I as I said, 90% of the time or whatever it is, or 100%, 95, I never doubted that it was the right move, but it was around that like lack of financial sort of, I guess, assurance, mostly for my family. Like, my wife was a good job as well, so she was able to earn, which helped us a little bit in that sort of trade-off of startup versus good government job. But no, we're really happy now that we decided to stay with it. Yeah.
Okay, let's go and talk all things Kogo. So this is Kogo, you rebranded it in 2018. So can you just tell me in a nutshell what is Kogo? And then you were working with Conscious Consumer, this name, for such a long time, and then you changed it and rebranded it in the UK. So tell us everything about that.
Sure. So I guess Conscious Consumers and now the name Kogo, the product is trying to do the same thing really, which is it's trying to help people understand how their spending is impacting on the world. So we say we help you align your spending with your environmental and social values. So if you say, I really want people to be paid better wages, or reduce climate change, or reduce my plastic waste that I when I buy, Kogo helps you understand, and Conscious Consumers helps you understand what is the impact of buying from this business over that business. So say you want to pay people good wages. In the UK, for example, the way the product works is we integrate to your financial data. So we have 35 banks that we connect into. And so if you're a customer of Monzo or Barclays Bank, whatever, you can, on our app, you download our app and then you can connect all your financial data into the app. And then we analyze it and tell you, hey, you told us you want to buy from businesses that pay their workers a good wage. Well, we have thousands of businesses that are on our app that pay a living wage, so certified living wage merchant. So they pay more than just the minimum, they pay like more than minimum. And we can say to you, hey, June, you told us you care about this, but we can see you're buying in this coffee shop or this insurance company. You should move to this alternative options of companies because they sell insurance and they sell coffee, whatever, near you and things, but they also pay their staff a living wage. And so the whole product is about helping people understand the choices they're making. And so we analyze all your current spending, and then we use sort of behavioral science to nudge you to be like, hey, not go and buy something because there's a discount and collect some points that you can earn and buy some toaster or stupid flight, whatever. It's actually saying, we're going to help you understand that the choices you're making are causing this impact on the world. And if you wanted to make better impact around the things that you care about, these are the recommendations. So that's Conscious Consumers. The reason the name changed is people couldn't spell conscious. so not good on SEO stuff. I know. And people don't want to be thought of as a consumer, really. You know, like it's sort of, I don't want to, you know, our demographic is sort of 20, 30, 35 sort of year old women, particularly millennial, really, that are like, I want to be part of the world, a citizen in the world. Yes, I know that government's failing at solving climate change and plastic waste, but I want to know that I'm contributing to a world that's aligned with what I care about. And everyone's different. Some people might really want to support locally owned and, you know, female-led businesses, for example, or ones with good gender pay gap and things, or not much of a gap. Other people might be like animal welfare, and I can't buy anything that's like got animal products, or other people might like climate change. So everyone's different. So our job is to make you go to sleep at night thinking, oh, I'm making the world something that's good inside my values. So the product is an app, but the second part of the product, which is where we're growing quite a lot in Australia as an example, which I'll talk about, is it's going to take a lot to grow the business by just getting people to download another app and use another app. And so more and more now, the partnerships we're working on are around integrating our data into, like, you know, Bank of Malaysia or something like that, big banks in different markets, where instead of having to download another app, you can just open up your app and it would tell you, your banking app, here's your carbon footprint, for example. So we'll be announcing quite a few partnerships in the next weeks and months with lots of banks who are going to use our data and put it inside their own banking app. Yeah, but there's heaps of opportunities. It's just the start. This is going to be we call it a rainbow unicorn, which is a unicorn, but it's also rainbow colored because it's going to change the world in a good way, not just grow, you know, to be $1 billion business.
So your monetization is with the partnership with the banks, right?
Currently,
the app
yeah.
is free.
The app is free. Yep. In time, we, you know, like, I don't know, like with Google, like with Facebook, like with other platforms, in time, you could sell services for the businesses that are on the app. So that, you know, basically, you know, sell marketing and insights to those retail businesses that are on our app. But the main monetization currently is, yeah, working with banks, and they pay a sort of license fee, so a subscription for all of the data that we give them, and then ends up on their app. So yeah, that's the current. But it's not just banks. We've got supermarkets, we've got, you know, Google Pay and Apple Pay and Stripe, and all these big platforms are looking to help their customers and understand the stuff. So I think we're starting to diversify into new markets as well.
Okay, does this have a competitor? This app, does it have a
Well, it's funny because there's almost, as you said, there's two real businesses here. One's like, there's the app, which you can download, like a direct to consumer sort of proposition. I'd say ours is probably one of the most advanced in the world. There's more and more now coming. Like 3 years ago or 10 years ago, when we had Conscious Consumers, we were like, yeah, one of a kind. I guess in the last year, there's been a massive acceleration of products to market. I still think the combination of financial data and sustainability data and behavioral science means that we're probably still category leader in that sort of direct to consumer. The other business, which is a sort of sustainability data company, which powers, I mean, again, we're probably one of maybe 3 or 4 in the world that are winning the big deals now with some of these banks. So yeah, it's really exciting because it essentially it's building a new category of a business, and we're like, yeah, and in 5 years' time, you'll be like, yeah, Ben Gleisner, he was on this podcast way back then. I think it's that sort of a business. Like it's going to go big. There's a heap of interest across the world in it, and we want to make this a Kiwi company that's, yeah, competing on the world stage. And why not? Eh? That's what entrepreneurialism is about, and especially when you want to change the world as well in a good way. It's like it's even more reason to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, so you went to the UK for a scholarship with Google, right?
Yeah, Google have a startup program that was focused on tech for good companies. So that was one reason. There was actually about three reasons to go to the UK. But yeah, one of the reasons was that Google was supporting us and supported us with an office in London. It started off with just 2 people, and then we were about 16 when I left UK. So it grew, and yeah, we focus on UK for also because of the financial sector. It's quite progressed in terms of this thing called open banking, which you talked about, which is just the banks in the UK have to share the data with the customers who bank with them and work with parties like us to help their customers access services like ours. But yeah, UK was a good choice
Yeah, so
until COVID happened.
25,000.
Until COVID happened. Yeah.
So
Anyway,
you have 25,000 downloads, I think, for the
actually, we're
UK.
yeah, we're it's more like 40 now, but yeah, there's about 100,000 across the entire product. So that's the app again. So, and in some ways, that's almost just a fraction of where we're going to be through the API, because I don't know, one of the banks we work with, NatWest, for example, they have 10 million plus. Santander, who we just announced a partnership with, they have 100 million customers across the world. So yes, our app's great and it's got tens of thousands, but we're sort of, with these banking partnerships, we're going to be able to reach millions, which is sort of where we want to be in terms of creating impacts. Yeah, but yes, the app has done well in UK.
Okay, great. What are some of your company's expansion plan this year? Let's
Sure.
talk about maybe Australia. Let's start with Australia.
Yeah, well, lucky any Australians listening to the show, we're working with actually all of the main banks and quite a few of the other ones to bring Kogo's data into those banking apps experiences. So I think that's definitely the next big market we're focused on in terms of outside UK, New Zealand. So yeah, by the end of the year, at least a couple of the banks are going to have sustainability data inside their experience. It should be great because people are really wanting to know a bit more about their impact in the world, and a bank's well positioned because it knows where you're spending, and therefore we can tell you a bit about your impact. So that's Australia. It's fair to say every week, and it's probably now more than once a week now, we get inquiries from banks. So this last week, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, not Malaysia, unfortunately, but some point. But anyway, definitely those three countries, and then lots of Europe and North America and Canada. So we're getting interest in terms of where we feel like the opportunity set is. Yeah, North and Western Europe, definitely, North America, and yeah, we don't see maybe large areas of the Asian market being right now. It's definitely coming. Like it's definitely going to be somewhere where people who are bank with some of these organizations or I don't know, on WeChat, whatever, they are starting to want more transparency about the stuff that they buy and things. So yeah, it's going to be around the world in 5 years, but probably in the order of North America, Northern Europe, into Asia, and then Middle East. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me how this works. So I have a Westpac account,
Bank.
and then
Yeah.
if you're in Westpac NZ, right? So
Yes.
like, and they are integrated. So okay, like I want to go and buy a coffee, and you
Sure.
would Kogo would suggest us to go to XYZ coffee shop because they use recyclable.
For example, yeah. So let's say you've come June and said to us, or on Westpac's app. At the moment, it's just climate. So the focus is around reducing your carbon footprint. So I'll give you an example of that because it's an example, right? So on Westpac, on the app, because we have all that data on your spending, we know that you've spent this much on your fuel and this much on your electricity and this much on your eating and drinking. You might have told us you're a vegetarian, so it's slightly lower than it would otherwise have been. So we've got almost like a history of your spending. We then can see, say you bought from a high street fashion business, and the journey would start with, hey, June, you've told us you want to reduce your carbon footprint. You've bought $100 for clothing here. There are two things you could do next time thinking about it. One would be try a rental fashion business so that you can rent some of those clothes for 20% of the cost and things. Or maybe you could try more and more like secondhand or whatever. There's other options, right? And so we then recommend you other businesses nearby. And so then when you go and buy from that business, we pat you on the back and say, hey, well done. You rented that dress rather than buying it. That means your carbon footprint's this much lower. And so we call it the ethical nudge, which is nudging you towards businesses that are better aligned to things like, reducing your carbon footprint. But in time, the coffee shop example is a good one. So it might be like, so you've told us you want to reduce your plastic waste you create. You've been buying from this coffee shop. Round the corner from that coffee shop, there's one that lets you bring your own cup and gives you a discount, for example. And then when you go and buy from that coffee shop, we might be like, hey, well done. That's one less cup in the landfill or something. So yeah, you get it. It's just sort of it's not trying to get you better deals or like save money as such. It's more about how do you go home and feel good about talking to your family about the fact that as a family we're helping to reduce our plastic or climate change, or buy from more businesses that are owned by female or indigenous communities or things like that, whatever matters to you. Yeah.
Okay, how do you communicate this with the consumer? Do they need to have like the bank app and then also Kogo, or is
Either
it
way,
integrated?
yeah, it's either one. Yeah, so yeah, good example. So in the UK, and this is where the sort of product has evolved. So it in New Zealand and UK right now, you download Kogo. So you download a Kogo app, you connect, you basically press a button that says, here's my bank or here's my banks that I work with. We then connect into your bank and we pull that banking data, but you're only using Kogo. So that's the main product at the moment in UK, New Zealand. What's happening more and more, and we're announcing something in a few weeks, is the banks themselves are also wanting to have the same experience that we've got in Kogo, but inside the banking app. So not now, as in right now, you won't be able to open your banking app and see all the stuff, but that's where it's heading. That's where the company's sort of growth, and as I said, we work with NatWest and Santander and the Australian banks I mentioned, and all the banks here in New Zealand. They're all working at different degrees of sophistication on bringing some of these experiences inside their bank. So you won't need to in the future download Kogo if you just don't want to get another app, or you just want to have a little bit of a experience. You'll be doing it in your banking app, or you'll do it. Your Apple Watch will pop up and say something, or whatever, when you bought something in Google Pay, or when you're on Amazon, or you're in your supermarket shopping app. That is where I think you'll start seeing Powered by Kogo as a sort of brand supporting you to understand how much of my shopping bill last month was causing climate, or how much of my plastics going down from my shopping bill, how much, so that sort of information will start appearing in supermarket shopping apps and things. But yeah.
Okay, I saw your at the end of the website, your Kogo website, it says there, you have black and white that you're very conscious about personal data because you're having partnership with bankings, and those are all very sensitive information, banking information. So tell us some of the ways that you actually protect your consumers, any one of your consumers' data, and then from cyber attacks and stuff like that.
Sure. I mean, it's no question that we're asking people to connect what is a very valuable set of data that they currently have. I think one thing I often say is that if we don't keep the trust of the people on our app, we'll lose their trust, and then we lose the opportunity to both influence them, and ultimately then we don't have a business. So number one priority is that we protect people's the trust. We're quite happy so far. I'll tell you about how we do that, but with the actual nearly half of the people that download our app actually connect their banking data. So it's quite crazy. Like we were like, are people going to want to do this? It's quite, personal. But I think the one thing is that people, I think, really do want to know this impact they're having in the world and are willing to, I guess, take the risk in some ways of handing over the data. But then we also manage risk. So, the company has, it's called penetration tests. So when we work with the banks and have all the integrations, they need assurance that the data that's being passed on to us is really legitimate. So we have had a lot of security tests, external organizations coming in, almost as you say, trying to hack us and figuring out, what the sort of weaknesses are. We also are 100% cloud-based, so we work with AWS, and so the infrastructure we've built is working in partnership with them, and so they're also very supportive and help us make sure, in some ways, you don't want to say it, but some of the banks' own ecosystems that are actually less modern and less secure than what we're building in now. It's almost like, so I don't want to say that you're more likely to have your bank app or your banking data hacked than you are on ours, but in some ways, we are building a more modern technology stack. But everything we do is done with the care of the people who have trusted us with their data. So whether it's policies internally around nobody in the company can access the data that sits on our servers. We have a double encryption, and so that it's very we hold it with a lot of care, not just for external hacking, but around the use of it within the company itself. So it's all anonymized. For example, as soon as it comes in, we don't keep any personal information. We just say we don't need that information to make our product work, and we make sure that whenever there is, it's like a concrete wall effectively between someone's personal information, like their name and things, and then the financial data. So we just care about it a lot, and we have never had an issue to date.
All right, great. And that is all the time that we have for today. We've just been speaking to Ben Gleisner, the founder and CEO of Kogo. Thank you, Ben, for joining us today.
No problem. Yeah, everyone have a great day. I hope you enjoyed it. And look us up. We say, let's go change the world. Let's Kogo.
Awesome. And that pleasure is all ours. Be sure to join us next week when we interview another awesome entrepreneur from across the Tasman. Thank you.